Though his son sounded subdued, Muammar Gaddafi himself was sounding undaunted this morning. He says his supporters are armed and prepared to fight, and he's pledging that this will be, quote, a long war. Joining me now, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Mike Mullen. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Is the United States leading this, or is it in a supporting role?
Well, actually, the French were the first ones in yesterday in terms of starting to establish a no-fly zone. The United States is taking the lead in terms of the coalition. General Carter Ham, U.S. commander of U.S. AFRICOM, is actually the commander right now. And we look to, in the next few days, transition that to a coalition leadership.
So the U.S. will pull back?
The U.S. will essentially take a supporting role, providing unique capabilities, certainly in terms of things like jamming, things like...
but not bombing and flying over?
No, well, certainly we'll be in transition. I mean, effectively, Christian, what's happened in the last 24 hours is the no-fly zone has been put in, has essentially started to have its effects. We've got aircraft over Benghazi right now, and we have that for 24/7. He hasn't flown any aircraft in the last 2 days. So the initial part of the operation and the idea of getting a no-fly zone in place
is successful?
It has been successful so far.
So will it be a long war, as Colonel Gaddafi pledges?
Well, we're very focused on the limited objectives that the President has given us, and actually the international coalition has given us, in terms of providing the no-fly zone so that he cannot attack his own people, to avoid any kind of humanitarian massacre, if you will, and to provide for the humanitarian corridors, the humanitarian support of the Libyan people.
So you say a limited objective, but we've heard from the President, we've heard from the Secretary of State, Gaddafi has to go. Is that the military objective?
Well, the military objective is as I just described it, in terms of the mission is very clear right now. It's to focus on getting this no-fly zone in place and to support the UN objectives of no humanitarian crisis and humanitarian support, protecting Libyan civilians.
So it's possible that we could have, like Iraq, a 12-year no-fly zone with the strongman still in place?
Well, again, I think circumstances will drive where this goes in the future. I wouldn't speculate in terms of length at this particular point in time. It's had a pretty significant effect very early in terms of our ability to address his forces, to attack his forces on the ground, which we did yesterday outside Benghazi, and get the no-fly zone stood up.
What about other countries, such as Bahrain, such as Yemen? If the United States military is attacking to protect civilians in Libya, why not in Bahrain and Yemen?
Well, I think, first of all, just back to Libya, a very important part of this has been the Arab League vote to establish a no-fly zone, and the partners, the coalition partners that are coming into play with respect to Libya.
Correct, but what's the logic?
In terms of
other people civilians being killed in other countries where the U.S. has an interest?
Well, I think we have to be very careful to treat every country differently. Certainly, there's a tremendous change going on right now throughout the Middle East, including in Bahrain, and Bahrain is a much different in a much different situation than Libya. We haven't had a relationship with Libya for a long, long time. The Bahrainis and that country has been a critical ally for decades. So we're working very hard to support a peaceful resolution there, as tragic as it has been, and we certainly decry the violence which has occurred in Bahrain. Which I just think the approach there needs to be different.
Do you think the Libyans have the wherewithal to retaliate against the United States or its allies in the region?
I don't think, from a military standpoint, certainly they have some capability, and yet, at least if I were going to take the first 24 hours or so, they've not been a very effective force. Part of what you do when you go into this is you assume they have a fairly significant capability, or the capability they have is good until proven otherwise. We've taken out their air defense. We've actually stopped we've attacked some of their forces on the ground in the vicinity of Benghazi, and yesterday they were on the march to Benghazi. They were lobbing rockets and mortars into Benghazi. Well, Benghazi, they're no longer marching there. I wouldn't describe Benghazi as safe at this particular point in time.
But even though you say you have to assume that they have some kind of capability, realistically, do you think Gaddafi can attack civilian aircraft, targets, and will do?
Well, he still has, from what I have seen this morning, he still has some surface-to-air capability where he could attack an aircraft, including one of ours. We haven't seen large-scale indications of that after the action yesterday. He clearly has the ability to continue to attack his own people, and then we're very focused on that and trying to ensure that his military forces don't do that.
Mustard gas stockpiles, is that a problem?
Very closely monitored, and I haven't seen it as a problem thus far.
Admiral Mullen, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you, Christiane.